morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, so it's time for Coffee with Karl. I'm Karl Dye from Trideck, and we have a really great panel today. We're going to talk about Energy Forward Alliance, but first I have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Mike Miller with Moon Security. You saw the video there. We're going to talk about playing the guitar a little bit later, but I think that was a good kind of montage, setting up our conversation with one of our guests today. Mike's been a great sponsor. We really appreciate his support of Coffee with Karl, great Trideck board member, and a really great company. They're in downtown Pasco. If you have any security questions for your business, for your home, Mike's the guy to go talk to. So we appreciate support from Moon Security. Okay, so this morning we have our steering committee. I'm gonna call the group that we have for Energy Forward Alliance. And I'm going to go through and introduce everybody in no particular order. So we are really pleased to have joining us remotely from Anacortes, Washington, Bob Schutz, who's the CEO of Energy Northwest. Good morning, Bob.
Morning, Karl. Morning, everyone.
What's the weather report from Anacortes?
Going to be beautiful today, although we got a little bit of fog out over the sound right now. So, but it looks like it's going to be spectacular here just shortly.
All right. Well, thanks for making time for us on your vacation.
Yeah, of course.
You bet. Jamie Shimmick is the Executive Director of Communications and External Engagement for Battelle at Pacific Northwest National Lab. Good morning, Jamie.
Hey, Karl. How are you?
Good. I just want to say and give you a shout out for being a Northwest native, a Washingtonian. It's so great to have you back, and especially in the Tri-Cities in your role. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Happy to be back.
You bet. Paula Lennon is a retired Battelle executive, also the immediate past AWB, or Association of Washington Businesses board chair, and she's also the principal at the Foster Institute. Good morning, Paula.
Good morning, Karl. Thanks a ton for getting us together on this
Oh,
bright, sunny, beautiful morning. My gosh, can't do better than this.
It's perfect. And we usually meet at 7 a.m. So it's nice that we're here at 9 a.m. We'll all just throw out.
Very late.
Be here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Ron Boninger is one of the founders of the Fuse Accelerator. He serves on their board and on the Trideck board. He's the immediate CEO of Carbitex, just recently retired. And he's really currently focused on clean energy, and he's joining us remotely from the home of rock and roll in Cleveland. Good morning, Ron.
There you go. That's right. The home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Thanks, Karl, for all your work. Great stuff.
You bet. Thanks for joining us, Ron. Last but not least, and the guitar reference is our own, and I'll just claim him as our own, Mike Schwenk. Mike is, I'm going to say that he's running the AWB Foundation. He's also a retired Battelle executive, and he was the first Trideck CEO. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. And
Yep.
No pressure on the guitar. If you want to get it for later, just feel free.
I was out playing last night. I can keep it going.
Okay. All right. So before we get into Energy Forward Alliance, we'll go through our ritual of coffee cups. And this morning, I'll kick us off. I have a Starbucks, the state mugs for Washington. We had an earlier one that didn't really have anything other than the west side of Washington. So this one at least has some wine and some bicycles and stuff that's relative to the Tri-Cities and to central Washington. But I thought it was appropriate because, the carbon policies of the state of Washington, I think, were one of the things that led up to all of us getting together for Energy Forward Alliance, that we understand the direction of the state. And from our community, I think it was one of the principles that we discussed is that what can we do leveraging local assets to get ahead of the regulatory environment and lead with some good positive business solutions? And so I'll just throw out there that I thought that was appropriate. Let's go to Paula next. I'm just looking around the room, no particular order. Paula, do you have a mug or a coffee or any type of drink story for us?
Let's give it a whirl. So this is my mug. This
Yeah.
is the mug I actually use every single day. And while it seems kind of generic, there are two things that are important to me about this one. First of all, I'm very much a morning person, and it's a little bit cheery. So somehow I think that fits. And then secondly, my husband bought this for me because we were on travel and actually liked to drink out of actual mugs and had forgot our mugs. And we were in Wallace, Idaho. which is very close to the Hiawatha Trail, which is something that we do, you would know, Carl, at least annually. It's a great, great bike trail.
Yeah.
And so I remember it because of that. He gave it to me, was a great, beautiful day, easy trip from the Tri-Cities. So that's my story.
That's awesome. I love that. I just have to point out that Wallace has a big medallion in the middle of the street that they do claim to be the center of the universe, which, for anybody listening out there.
I've stood on that. I have my questions, but nonetheless, it was fun.
Well,
Thanks.
Wallace is known for many things, but back in the day, it was the only stoplight on I-90 between Seattle and Chicago. So it was the last holdout for the freeway.
Yeah. See, I knew you would have more history on this.
Yeah, I'm kind of a history nerd. Thanks, Paula.
Yeah.
Ron, what do you got for us?
Well, as you pointed out, I'm traveling, so I just have a generic mug here. So I'm going to break the rules and show you my favorite hat, which won't surprise anyone.
Oh yeah.
I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree from Ohio State. My brother got his MD degree there. My other brother got a PhD in psychology there. My niece is getting her medical degree there right now. All in all, 12 degrees from Ohio State within our immediate family. Now, having said that, my second favorite university is WSU. So go Cougs.
There you go.
Understand that. And since I'm in Ohio, I will tell you this too. There is an operating nuclear power plant here, I'll call Perry Nuclear, that's been operating for a long time. And my father-in-law was a quality engineer on the opening construction crew for Perry Nuclear. So a little bit of heritage there too.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me break
Awesome.
the rules.
Hey, Ron, I heard that Ohio State's going to join the Pac-12. They got some openings.
Well, Bob, your sources might be just a little bit off. You may want to go check. Could be fake news.
All right.
But we appreciate your enthusiasm, Bob. That's an appropriate comment. Jamie, what do you have for us for drink or mug or coffee or anything?
I was saying drink or mug because in the pre-show I was explaining I'm actually one of those people who drinks water, only water. But this morning I have a special sparkling water because I don't drink caffeine. That helps me stay awake in the morning. And
That's
also,
awesome.
as you graduate, I feel compelled to say also that Go Cougs, they are my favorite university.
Go Cougs. Thanks, Jamie. Mr. Mike, what do you have for us for a mug or a coffee story?
Mine is a cousin of Ron's,
Ah,
and it's boring like me, and it's just it's the only damn coffee cup I could find that would keep coffee hot.
Exactly.
okay.
Here's to you, Mike.
Okay, well, let's jump into our Energy Forward Alliance and along the Ohio State WSU comments. I have to throw up that our other member that couldn't join us this morning that's been working as the steering committee is Mark Schuster from Lamb Weston, who is probably literally the biggest Coug that I know in many forms and fashion. But his son Sam does play for the University of Idaho Vandals, and Mark is in Reno today, getting ready for the game tomorrow against University of Nevada, Reno, and I'm a Vandal, so I'm going to say go Cougs and go Vandals. Okay, Energy Forward Alliance. Who
Hey,
wants
Karl.
to start off? Yeah.
Did we hear from Bob and his mug, just out of curiosity, or did I miss that?
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
Just,
Sometimes I forget. Thank you.
I'm just so curious.
I did the same thing on a similar panel with our own Senator Matt Binky, and he's never let me forget it. So thank you for pointing that out. Bob, can you share your mug with us, please?
Yeah, so here it is. My wife and I right now are out in Anacortes camping in our RV, and our RV's got a name. It's called Homer. And so this mug, my wife has one that's the same. It says Home Sweet Homer on the bottom. And so you might ask, why Homer? And Energy Northwest is we're a clean energy, clean electricity producer. And our biggest asset is the Columbia Generating Station. And so the Homer is a throwback to Homer Simpson, the epitome of a professional nuclear plant operator. So cheers, everyone.
Yeah, here's the Homer.
Cheers.
Thanks, Bob, and thank you, Paula, for bringing that up. Okay, so Paula, I'm going to go to you first, and I'm going to ask if you could give us the overview of Energy Forward Alliance, what we're working on doing. I also want to throw out for everybody watching us on Zoom, as we go through our discussion, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them as we can. If you're watching on social media, you can put it in the comments and Tracy will get them to us and we'll get through some of those questions. So Paula, can you kick us off with just giving us some background and what the heck is Energy Forward Alliance?
Sure. Thanks, Karl. So I would just say, as is typical of the Tri-Cities, there was a group of community leaders and interested parties that started meeting about a year ago, I guess, and really talking about how the Tri-Cities is central to a clean energy future, that we're right at the nexus of remarkable technologies and research and universities and manufacturers and agriculture. And there's always been a lot of interest in energy writ large. And so this particular group of individuals was very interested in developing a clean energy vision, one that would help to transform the Mid-Columbia in particular, and one that could potentially create demonstrations and ideas that perhaps could be scaled or would inspire others throughout the state. And so our interest is really in that clean energy vision that would help reduce carbon, frankly, very directly, and then also inspire others to join in this. And so I think what is often hard is that small businesses don't have access to the machines that some of the big institutions that we have in the Tri-Cities do. And so the effort here is really to share what we're learning, to have some demonstrations, and to create this momentum around an energy future. So I'll start with that and others can add on to it.
That was really good. Does anybody else have anything to add specifically or some other things that have been part of our discussion in deciding to launch EFA or Energy Forward Alliance?
Yeah, Karl, I'll just add that, you know, we really are in this inflection point, I think, globally with climate change, with increasing severe weather events, from the heat dome we had here in the Pacific Northwest just a couple of years ago, to the increasing severity of hurricanes and wildfires across the US, but also globally, other severe weather events. There's really an ever more pressing need for this community, which has been such an impactful, important leader in energy in the many decades that we've been working on this, to really come together to serve as a model for not just our region, but our state, our country, and even the globe. And then also the confluence of these historic, clean energy focused laws, goals, and really, frankly, investments. Given our history of the important, impactful leadership, this is the time. And as our friend Diane Howard would say, this is the place.
Very well said.
Yeah, and Karl, if I could jump in,
Yeah.
you know, so Tri-Cities is already a leader in the clean energy transformation, but beyond the Tri-Cities, you might not know that. And so, you know, part of this is just getting the message out for a lot of reasons, bring in trained and skilled workers who can help us, you know, people who have a particular need, look our way. Washington State's in a unique situation, I think, compared to all 50 states, in that because of the advantage we have with the Columbia River system, we can actually achieve the 100% carbon free. And we could really be an inspiration, as Jamie and Paula both said, not just locally, but to the nation and even the world on what can be done. And so we want to make sure everyone knows, if you want to get involved in this, come to the Tri-Cities. We can find a way for you to help. Make my answer long, you know, when we hire a new employee today, a professional employee, like many companies, we give them an article in our employee newsletter, and we asked them, well, why did you come to the Tri-Cities? Why did you come to Energy Northwest? And almost unanimously, they say, because I want to be part of the clean energy transformation. And so there are plenty of people who want to be involved. We just have to make sure they know there's an opportunity for them right here in the Tri-Cities.
That's a really great point. I might just jump in as well. I think something that Jamie said was significant, and that's investment. So, the federal government in clean energy and many other programs, especially through Department of Energy, which clearly has a close relationship with our community. But that investment is, I think, one of the other things. We want to make sure that investment continues to come to the Tri-Cities, because we are the place for all the reasons that we just said. And I think, from an economic development point of view that we're all involved with, it's like these are the jobs of the future, as you said, Bob, with your new employees. And I think that culturally, younger generations are even more in tune with the direction that we need to go. And so I think those are good points that you pointed out. The next question, we actually got one from the audience. Yeah, Mike.
I want to add 2 cents to all that.
Yeah.
But from a different perspective, I was thinking like pension funds tend to be conservative investors, but every one of them has a piece of their portfolio called alternative investments, where they take a little sliver of their resources and they put it in extraordinarily high risk type investments, not thoughtless investments, but high risk. And from an economic development strategy point of view, communities should do the same thing. It's you and your fellow professionals in the ports and chambers, et cetera. You slug it out in the trenches every day doing the economic development grind, but a community should always ask itself, what else could we do above and beyond that? And if you go back in time, our community's history is full of the modern history, anyway, of doing the extraordinary. And we haven't been successful in all of them, but we tried. And not to have tried is to have failed. And so when times are kind of good, and I'd have to say economically in the Tri-Cities times are kind of good, that is a perfect time to go say, let's try another high risk venture for our community that would have all the benefits you all were just talking about, fits who we are and what we do. And it's legitimate that we believe we can make this happen, and it not overnight, but the big ones don't happen overnight. And so there's a psychological reason, I think, in a community to take on the big, the giant, the mega project.
Mike, that was very well said. Thanks for adding that. And I appreciate that point and your perspective. I referred to you as our first CEO at TriDec. And of course, in the late 80s, when this community was really faced with some not really good potential future outcomes, you and other leaders in the community came together for a program I believe was called kind of Tri-Cities Renaissance that led to many great things. And I think that that's very inspirational. I think that you're right, that it does point to our culture as a community, and again, why we are the right place to put this group together and be that clean energy leader that in a lot of ways we already are. But to your point, to be purposeful and focused on it as this group intends to do in the future is a way to make it happen and make those big things happen. Yeah. Let's we do have one question from the audience, and the next question on my list too is, why is EFA necessary? And here at TriDec, we've hosted and facilitated a group that's been around since I believe 2009 called Mid-Columbia Energy Initiative. The Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce has My Tri 2030 that has a very successful energy council that has some great accomplishments. And of course, Jamie talked about literally our own Diane Howard at Port Benton, who stood up an organization along with her partners called Washington Vertical that's focused on clean energy supply chain that we've all worked with. So who wants to take the jump ball on this one? How do we differentiate ourselves from those previous kind of community initiatives around clean energy? and these things, and what are some differentiators, or what would we like to achieve with Energy Forward Alliance?
And I can
Hey, Ron.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I think
Ron.
it's Ron. I'm calling it Ron.
Okay. So I think what's really important to say, and is fundamentally sound, is the way I like to put it, that there's this foundation, but we're going to stand on the shoulders of all these efforts that came before us. And there's this foundation that exists in the Tri-Cities, our history with Hanford, the universities, these specific efforts that you mentioned, MCEI, My Tri 2030, and Washington Vertical, that really is an enabler for us to put forth the Energy Forward Alliance. And as with anything, if there can be a unified, well-resourced effort with an outstanding, dedicated leader to lead it, we could take it to that next level, and I really believe with this foundation that exists, and we all know about it, from solar to hydro to nuclear, 100% clean utility, that we can be an example for Washington State, we can be an example for the world, but it started with all the efforts that have come before us and enabled us to build upon it.
And I would add on to that, Ron, which I think you did a very good explanation, wonderful explanation even. We're going to continue to partner with those. I can tell you at PNNL, we have folks that are actively involved with MCEI. I know Bob does as well, and others at this table. We're going to continue to partner with them. We're going to continue to collaborate with them. They are very important. They help show that community passion that Ron was talking about. So they're not going away. But as Ron said, we hope to sort of take it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm directly involved with Washington Vertical. I attend all the MCEI meetings. It's a function of how we all go forward together in the future.
I might.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. Hey, I'm totally on board with what Ron and Jamie said. And something else we've realized at Energy Northwest is when you're out looking for assistance from the state or even the federal government, the bigger the group that you represent, the higher the likelihood that you're going to be successful in that application. So, the Alliance will kind of represent everyone. We don't replace anybody, but we can represent the whole region in trying to bring those new business opportunities, whether it be grants or actual companies in, because we'll be able to talk about all of these key pieces of our foundation.
Mike,
Mike, were you going to say something?
Oh, yeah, I think I was. No. Well, once upon a time I chaired MCEI.
Yeah.
And I found it frustrating. Like I do all committees made up of volunteers. You struggle mightily with doing something, and having the meeting or a speaker come to a meeting is not my definition of success anyway. And so one of the differentiators in all of this, by creating what we're EFA, is capacity. And I recall you guys made reference to the the old days in the 80s when the town was burning. We created a loan executive program, and we had, I don't know, almost a dozen. These were full-time people. We were running the largest economic development program in the Pacific Northwest. And that's what we're going to be doing here. We're trying to create capacity. We're going to hire somebody. We've got money, and we hope more will come, and we see a pathway to all of that. It's very different, but it is a capacity builder to all those other efforts and all of the thinking and the aspirations of those other groups who don't have the benefit that we hope we can bring through EFA in terms of resource that is dedicated to the job.
Mm-hmm. And, Mike, just to put a finer point on it, I think that's absolutely it. And I think that it's and not instead of all these other past efforts. And I actually believe these past efforts have been, quite successful at gathering interested parties and stakeholders and really seizing the opportunity to both collaborate and also come together on energy ideas and opportunities. And that's what set the foundation. And so it's a real plus. And now we will add some additional resources and leadership to that that's focused on this clean energy aspect.
Yeah, if I were the volunteers on all those groups, I'd say, hallelujah, we're finally going to have somebody who's going to do something. I got to go back to my job, you know?
And I think we've learned over time that that's an important element, which is why we've come together on this.
Yeah, no, that you guys have really described it well, I think. And we do have one question about how we're organizing this, and I'll just maybe kick us off in that it was part of our announcement last week. So Energy Forward Alliance is currently a wholly owned subsidiary of TriDec. Our goal is that we've started the application process to become a 501c3 organization, and we are currently advertising to hire an executive director to Mike's point in kind of that differentiator and how we're building on the foundation of previous volunteer groups, but that capacity building with the executive director is a big differentiator. How about some of our goals in becoming a 501c3? And maybe somebody wants to take that one. TriDec's a 501c6, which is a membership organization. The tax benefits of C3 are much greater. They can actually accept donations. They can accept donations from corporate foundations, as an example. But I don't know, Mike, I see you nodding. Can you give us the reason why for a C3?
Well, I think you're kind of hitting on it. It was one of the reasons we created the AWB Institute as a 501c3. AWB is just like you at TriDec as a 6. But if you look at the sources of potential money and you get into the realm of not a corporation that buys a membership in a group, but a corporation's foundation that does investments, for the greater good. That world is so big, and especially in the state of Washington, it's almost unimaginable. And all you have to do is align this organization and its goals and mission and aspiration and its vision with the interests of foundations like that, and you have a foot in the door to find money that you can't traditionally get unless you are a 501c6. In addition, there's other government grants there. You can partner with universities. There's so many more things you can do when you're in the world of the gobbledygook of a 501c3 charitable nonprofit. And so it is an enabler, a huge enabler that others don't have. You don't have it at TriDec, and we didn't at AWB.
Yeah, that's very well said. Anything else that anyone would like to add on that point?
I do think that 501c3 offers the opportunity for continuous input as well, such that hopefully we're really focused on solutions and not just focus on meeting or investing in, our time in sitting around the table and talking about it. We really have to say what outcomes are we looking at? What solutions can we provide? How can we scale that out? How can we be beneficial across the state once we've demonstrated that right here in our own region? And I think a 501c gives us a better opportunity to do that.
No, that's a great point. From our partner and friend, Randy Hayden at Port of Pasco, Randy says, good to see you all, which is awesome. Thanks for joining us, Randy. And he's asking, how will EFA be funded? And I think it does relate to the C3 question, but does anybody want to take this one?
So this is Bob. I'll jump in quick. Yeah, as a starter, there were a few, I'll say North Richland organizations that provided some seed money to allow us to go hire the executive director through TriDec. So I don't expect that will continue forward. We think we have an excellent story to tell about the Tri-Cities. And so our executive director, I think, will be able to leverage that great history and create a self-sustaining organization here through the C3 thing.
Yeah.
So again, I think enough interest in this, for a few of us who got together to move it forward. But we anticipate in the long run, it'll be a self-funded organization.
Yeah, and that's exactly how the AWB Institute got going. Was we found seed capital from some generous people who who just said, yeah, okay, I'll roll the dice with you guys and, and give you some money, but it ain't forever. But that seed capital allowed the full-time resource, which then generated the other grant applications, et cetera, and partnerships, and then it took off. It went down the runway for a year or two, and then it got liftoff, and it's on its way. And so this should be the exact same scenario.
And I think AWB is such a great partner in all of this. They they sent it out in their Friday 5 last week. They're excited about it. And I think the Institute is a bit of a model. And there are some things that we can learn. And there's no doubt that they'll collaborate with us, won't you, Mike, and others on the board there. I just think it's a really good model that we can duplicate in some ways.
Yeah, I hope, I think the AWB Institute's interest in this is twofold. One, to the degree it would like to amplify the community's effort, however it can partner and help get resources, money, whatever. But secondly, the Institute's looking all over the state for success stories. And where have communities done some extraordinary things, whether it's in housing or childcare or workforce training, or, in this case, energy and a clean economy and all that we, the Institute, can say, hey, look what these folks did. We'll go promote that and share it and try and get others on board, so that the outcome from this isn't just for our community. I mean, we believe we're world class here, right? Well, then there's a world out there waiting for what we're able to do, and that we'd like to help spread that.
Anything else on this topic?
Well, we hope we have. I don't know if we answered Randy's question, but
Randy has agreed. We talked about MyTri 2030, and so one of the councils with MyTri 2030 has been the Agriculture Council, and Randy's currently chairing that council, really focusing on what they're calling an Ag Innovation Center. And so I wanted to point out, and Bob, just like you said, kind of our initial group came from North Richland, but we want this to be everyone in the Tri-Cities, and obviously agriculture, huge part of what we're doing. I think, Mark Schuster from Lamb Weston being one of our founding group is a good example of that. I think we're looking for that intertie, or that connection, or that nexus with clean energy as it applies to all of our industries here in the Tri-Cities, agriculture being so critically important, and food processing as well. And I think that that's an important point to make around industrial decarbonization, right? The state has the Climate Commitment Act now, CCA they call it, which is focused on reducing carbon from industrial applications. And I don't know that there are any easy solutions out there for companies like Lamb Weston and other food processors to be able to do that. And so I think I just wanted to throw that out, as that's one of the things that we intend to be able to include. And because we're a community-based organization, both TriDec and EFA, it's part of our community. It's part of our who we are and what we're going to do. Now, Ron, with your experience at Carbitex and other local manufacturers, you want to add anything to that from, like an industrial application and some of the things that we hope to be able to, that EFA would be able to help with and maybe offer some solutions long term?
Well, I'm going to be kind of general in this, because there's a lot of specifics that are going to happen. But Paula using the word "and" kind of made me think of this. One of the things that this effort is all about ultimately is to create a model of a net zero community, or a carbon neutral community, and maybe even carbon, negative, because there's a way to do direct air capture and things. But what's really, is inspiring, I think, to most of us, and can be to everyone, is that there's a genius of the "and" in what we're doing. So on one side, we have the future, talk about our children's and climate change and what our environment is going to look like in the future. But on the other hand, a net zero community is very helpful to that. The "and" of it is that it's also really good business. If you can reduce your energy costs, if you can find ways to create things more efficiently, that can go to the bottom line. So there's many different reasons why people will get involved. But in my mind, the effort that we put together, spans all of them. from the emotional connection to climate change to being able to run your business more profitably. And whether it's ag or whether it's what, Mark is doing at Lamb Weston, there's opportunities to do that. And our group can be a catalyst to identify those technologies and methodologies to get to it. And I think when our leader comes in to drive this with our support, we'll be able to find a lot of specifics that we can do in order to achieve our ultimate goal of a net zero community model.
I think to add on to Ron's comments there, I think that the most important part is finding a unified vision. Bob talked about it a little bit with when you're going after state money or going after federal money, what you need is a group of folks rowing in one direction. And, I think that's really what we hope to provide through EFA is some of that leadership, that capacity building. I'm going to get a little bit ahead of Karl for a second because I see in the comments people are asking, like, what are the 2 or 3 specific things that this group is going to do? I think we talked about one of them, which is capacity building. From my experience in the lab, we hear from a lot of folks, we just don't know how to find the opportunities that are out there for federal money, for state money. We don't know how to apply. We don't know how to write a grant. I'm not saying we're going to write grants for people, but we want to provide the capacity and build the capacity to help provide some of those tools. I think that is a key thing that we hope to do in this effort. So I'll give you one specific thing. And as we go, we can maybe identify our specific things, but also Ron talked about, I'll give you number 2, the model we talked about for a carbon neutral or perhaps a carbon negative community, and how can we export that elsewhere? Because as Bob said earlier, gosh, if we can't do it here where we're already 80% clean, where can we do it?
That's well said. And I appreciate those comments. And Ron, with being one of the founders of the Fuse Accelerator as an example, right? I think that's the other part of it is beyond, Bob's story about being able to attract young talent that's aligned with the mission of clean energy at Energy Northwest. I think to become that place where, to your point, Jamie, the people that are interested or have ideas or concepts that want to start new companies, that want to start new technologies, that want to kind of come to the Tri-Cities and start it here and get some support and do all these things. I think that's another part of what we're talking about and being that model, having the unified vision, building the economic base, building on the economic base for what we can do. Now, we got a couple questions about being a 501c3 and how, when it comes to clean energy, obviously we know, and TRIDEC as a 501c6, we're very solidly in support of things like the Lower Snake River dams and other parts of our clean energy base that we talked about that is part of our clean energy that we have here in the Tri-Cities. And the questions is, would EFA, weigh in on issues like that, things like the Lower Snake River dams? And then another one was around, do we see EFA interfacing with policymakers in Olympia? And I think it's a good question. And being a 501c3, obviously there are limits on, advocacy that you can do legally that we want to stay away from. But I'm looking at maybe Jamie, Mike, or Paula. Is that something you want to give some direction on? Like, where do we see EFA going? Are those issues that EFA would lead on, or how do we differentiate in between like TRIDEC and other community partners on some of these energy issues, if you will?
Sure, I'll take a first stab and then I'll give Mike and Paula some opportunity, time to think about the AWBI. So I do think that that's also potentially a model here of how we can, interact with Olympia or talk about issues of the day of import. And stepping back from the dam specifically, I'll go back to what Bob said. Gosh, between the Columbia River, between Columbia Generating Station, which is not a dam, but it's a really important source of baseload power. I think that what we want to do as EFA is we want to look at all of the existing clean energy sources that we have, and we want to leverage those to figure out how can they support a clean energy transition, a clean energy future. How can they be part of that? Because they will need to be part of that, right? I think weighing in on, specific hot button political issues, we'll call it that, is probably not going to be necessarily in the playbook for a 501c3 because of the limitations Karl mentioned. And, we want to make sure that we're we're bringing folks together of all sides. So, sometimes taking positions on hot button political issues prevents that. And I don't think at this point in time, we want to rule out participation from anyone.
Paul or Mike, anything to add to that?
So I would just say it is absolutely not the primary outcome for a 501c3, but as is the case with all great strategy planning, you really need to understand your outcomes. You need to understand the programs that you put in place to achieve those outcomes, and you need to understand the impact and effect on policy. And so we need to be ready to answer those questions. We won't go out and sell those things, but we will absolutely need to understand what are the current barriers, what would enable the community to make and accelerate progress around some sticking points that perhaps are policy issues. So always with great strategy, you need to consider that and be prepared to answer that when our constituents and our community is asking those questions.
Yeah, that's what the AWB Institute, it does. All the advocacy work is done through AWB, and the Institute just focuses on its mission. That said, it turns out it's really interesting. In some of these issues, the Institute's actually ended up in a supporting and a partnering role with the executive and legislative branches in the state to talk about issues like housing and childcare and things that matter to all of us, even things as crazy as airfields in rural communities and medical care. There's a whole lot of issues that the Institute's involved in that they help inform, they help convene. If the legislature says we'd like to meet with a bunch of people, well, we'll reach out to the communities, we'll make the meetings happen. And so you stay, you're not in there slugging out in the trenches, from a lobbying point of view, but you're really helping try and inform the whole conversation and keeping all the people together and talking to one another. And to the degree you can, and I think in the case of EFA, we're not in this alone. I get online, you'll find 100 communities or more around the world trying to do this. What has worked in other places and how have they done it and all that. We'd love to bring all that to the table, and it's so you play an informative role in all of that. But I don't want to. I don't want to get in front of the board either. We got to form a board of directors, and they're going to run this thing. So.
I was just thinking of a good example of that, because workforce issues sort of cross all strategies, and the Institute, and Bob participated and contributed to this, but led a workforce development effort that was really focused on exactly what we talked about, programs and solutions. And there were certainly some policy elements, but the Institute didn't take that on, AWB took that on. And so, again, there are models and great examples out there, and I think we can learn from others. And I think we will also be innovative and create sort of our own path. And that's part of what we'll rely on the executive director to do, who will be a true leader in this community. That's really what we're looking for, is a great leader in this community to take this charge and move it forward.
That's exactly right. I think I wanted to bring another point up, and it's one of the questions that we had. One of our founders is Sandra Haynes, who's the TRIDEC current board chair, and also the chancellor, of course, at WSU Tri-Cities. And she doesn't get the attribution that she deserves, but she created this slogan that now has gone global, and that's clean up to clean energy. Just talking about our community, right? Because in many cases, we're known for the Hanford cleanup, and all of the workforce, the talent, the infrastructure, the knowledge that our community has brought to bear on the cleanup challenge, we're looking at the future to transition into clean energy. And I think that that's a good point to bring up for EFA, as well as Sandra's involvement. And then the creation of the Institute for Northwest Energy Futures, which, the initial funding of that was a donation that was made by our own Bob Ferguson, who was TRIDEC's first board chair as the modern TRIDEC. And I think we all know Bob very, very well. Really a leader. We talk about standing on people's shoulders. Bob's one of the people in our community that we all stand on his shoulders. But then Sandra worked to put this model together. The state funded it in the legislature last year, which is huge. But so with that setup or that tee up, does anybody want to jump into how do we see EFA working with Institute for Northwest Energy Future, especially as it comes to, even policy or information or data? What do we think that relationship might work like? Or that's not a horrible thing to say, but how are we going to work with Institute for Northwest Energy Futures?
So I'll happily jump in there because I think, I want to bring a little bit of P&L in here. I think the Institute for Northwest Energy Futures is going to be an amazing resource for our state and our community in terms of, they want to look at how do we make this transition in a resilient, reliable, and equitable way. But I think from a P&L perspective, we're looking to partner with them as well to bring some of the capabilities of the laboratory to bear, some of our analytical capabilities. We help figure out what is the resilience and reliability. I see some comments in the questions about, transportation is 60% of, and I'm not fact checking that figure in real time, but it certainly represents a huge amount of our emissions here in Washington State. But we can't electrify all of our cars until we understand what the impact of that is going to be on the grid. So there are second, third, and fourth order effects of everything. But coming back to INEF, I think that there's ample opportunity for EFA to partner and build on. And then going back to Karl, your comment about clean up to clean energy, everybody talks about Hanford and the Hanford legacy. P&L grew out of that Hanford legacy. Energy Northwest is operating on the Hanford site with a huge amount of nuclear history and legacy. So, we already have that base of clean energy here, as we talked about a little bit in the past, a little bit earlier in this conversation. We also have, I think, the leveraging of some really smart folks, whether it's the Energy Northwest at the laboratory. Those folks are involved with MCEI, MyTri, other groups that will be critical as we bring this partnership really together towards a unified vision here at the Tri-Cities.
Yeah, Jamie, thanks for bringing that up. And I should have mentioned it before, the close relationship, obviously, that P&L has with Institute for Northwest Energy Future and the other three joint institutes, that there are these shared resources, and that's a really great point. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can, I hate to keep beating on AWB Institute, but it is the model. So it teamed up with WSU and has quite a close association through extension and that part of the university, which is the foot in the door to the rest of the university. But they're all over the state. We teamed up with them on a rural worker training program that we put online, and we've taken that now all over the state with them as the partner to do it. And so I can't predict today what EFA would do with any part of WSU, much less the local institute. But I'm 98% or 99% confident they will partner.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Hey, we've talked about it. We've talked about it a little bit here, but there's a side benefit, which is just strict economic development. Bringing new companies to the Tri-Cities. There are many organizations nationwide, worldwide, who want to be seen as supporting the clean energy transformation. And again, I said at the beginning, Tri-Cities is not something that pops up on the top of their list of places to relocate. So I think the EFA and their executive director will be able to look at those companies and say, hey, we've got this Institute for Northwest Energy Futures can help you with your planning. We've got P&L and their soon to be finished grid storage launch pad. How do we make renewables work a little better? So, I think, and it fits in with the AWB Institute, but making everyone know the resources we have available and why it makes sense to come here and grab a foothold in what's going on.
And just one last thing I would add is part of the reason why we're doing this, because there will be other interested parties, I'll just say, that we haven't thought about. And you all might be interested in the fact that, I'm so glad that INEF was brought up, because this group that you see here spent a little bit of time actually writing down and saying who the current energy partners and leaders are in the Tri-Cities and who would be interested and who do we need to reach out to. So we've really spent some time thinking about that and have a great start, I would say, but boy, I would sure hope that would build and build and build over time. If you have an interest, we don't say no. So.
Paul, that's a great point. We've already actually had a few folks in the chat and Q&A volunteered to help out. And since we made the announcement last week, we've also gotten a couple of volunteers that want to be a part of it. So I think that's a great indicator and a really good point in that we are looking for help and support, participation. That doesn't necessarily mean money. It could be other expertise that folks in the community or other organizations want to join us.
Resumes would be good.
Resumes are good.
That's right.
Yeah, want that
That's
leader.
That's right. Perfect setup because those are next steps, right? So, Bob, you want to talk about our search for our executive director, and Ron, we'll go to you after Bob on, what are we looking for? Who is this person? What are some of the parameters? What are we thinking on our executive director search?
Sure. Well, we are looking for an executive director. As maybe the key attribute, they have to be, I'll say, a leader, someone who can speak articulately, someone who can carry a message forward and inspire, organizations, who can inspire other people to come to the Tri-Cities. So that's who we're looking for at the top level. The second thing that's most important to us is, some knowledge of the Tri-Cities or our congressional and state legislature, those delegations who can go out and work with the policymakers, because at the end of the day, we want to influence policy, not just in the Tri-Cities, but with the state and local governments. Keeping in mind we are a C3, so that will limit us a little bit, but still someone who's comfortable working in those lanes. And then, closer to home, a number of the groups that got together to start this initiative, we really started with a very small focused effort on net zero for our individual organizations. And Jamie and PNNL, they put together, I'll say, an analysis tool we could use to, as a minimum, how can my company be a better, climate advocate? And so the executive director will take that and leverage it within the Tri-Cities, something we can each do. Doesn't require a lot of money, doesn't require a lot of time, just some thought and effort and how to be a better citizen. So I think those are the types of things that we're really interested.
Yeah. Ron, anything else to add? What are we looking for?
No, I think, well, Bob described it perfectly, what we're looking for. I think what I might add is that this is truly an exciting position for the person that, steps into it. If I was at a different point in my career, I'd be applying right away. Bob would probably reject me right away, but I'd apply. And part of that is because I know I can speak for our group and for a lot of others in the community. There's going to be tremendous support for this person to ensure their success, in the leadership that they're going to bring, within this community. We all want it to be successful. And it's always great when you have that kind of support when you're coming into, into a position, like that.
That's great. We're down to about 7 minutes, and since we all work together and have been working on the launch of EFA, I want to ask all of our group assembled today. Did I forget to ask anything? Is there anything else that we want to bring up as we kind of glide into 10 o'clock?
I want to make a shameless plug.
Okay.
Back to the Institute, surprise. It's not well known, but we've just spent the last year plus embarking on creating a vision for the state of Washington. And that effort, it's not reaching closure, but we've surveyed 3,500 people in the state. We've had 36 meetings all around the state, one of which was hosted in the Tri-Cities, collecting an awful lot of viewpoints about Washington in the year 2040. And we're now at the stage in a couple of weeks where we're going to actually start writing it and taking all of that, thousands of grassroots, bottoms up thoughts from people all over the state and every corner of the state, and trying to package that into a picture of the state of Washington that then we can all rally around and be that as our guide. This is where we want to be. And I just want everyone to know this project is going to be a major element of how the energy, carbon, environment, quality of place gets depicted in that picture of tomorrow for the state of Washington. So it's part of a big thing, and it's going to be the driver of that, at least that portion of it. So
yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Mike. I'll ask not a closing question, but let's just go around and think about that. So as we and I appreciate the historical perspective that we talked about, going back to the late 80s, when TriDeck was first formed as the modern TriDeck, and then, looking back forward now. And I think about, I wasn't here. I traveled through a lot during that time period, but, think about our community and how much our community's changed from the late 80s till now. So as I don't know, I'll throw out 10 years in the future, with the success of EFA that we anticipate, what do you think the Tri-Cities will look like? Or what are some things, possibly that when we think about visioning 10 years in the future for our community, what do you think it's going to look like? Or what do you think some differences may be without EFA? Just throwing it out there. And I'm going to start with Ron. He's thinking about it. Oh, Bob. Okay, Bob.
Let Bob go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so painting that vision is really important. So 10 years from now is 2030. After 2030. So one, we have achieved the state's 2030 essentially net zero goal. That's at the top. And how will the Tri-Cities look different as we do that? Where we're going to have a plant here making green fertilizer, and maybe we have another plant that's making green hydrogen. And maybe we have at least a foundation in place for a new nuclear facility.
Yeah.
I think that we see Wazoo Tri-Cities. If you go out across the country and look at companies who are developing small modular reactors, the way that the operators are trained and qualified will be very different than today. Why can't Wazoo Tri-Cities be the university in this country that does all that operator training, located all in one place? CBC, Columbia Basin College, is already doing that. They have the Nuclear Unified Curriculum Program. So, but I think this would be even something bigger than that. And so that's what I see. I see industries that not just rely on clean energy to do their thing, but they produce something that's clean as well, that we can use in other places. We have a lot, Tri-Cities is great. We have land, we have water, we have electricity, we have multimodal transportation system. There's 100 reasons already to come here. But now if we add on top of that, you've got this infrastructure behind you that's going to make you a successful, clean, whatever it is you build. I think the floodgates will open, and maybe we'll even run out of land. I don't know. That's my vision.
That's
great.
great.
Bob has just given a very shorthand version of the vertical innovation clusters. This is the place presentation.
Yeah.
Good job, Bob.
Yeah.
For me, in addition to all the things Bob talked about, the huge economic development that this will bring in addition to the industries he's talked about, I can see, potentially battery storage or energy storage companies locating here and building here because of the proximity to PNNL and Energy Northwest and others. But the second order effect that I hope to see is something Bob touched on, is how are we creating a workforce pipeline of folks who come here, but even more importantly, folks who are here who we can get to stay here, because there is good workforce training, good educational aspects, even better enhancements to what we already have, and jobs to stay here. To me, kind of closing the circle, as Bob might say, closing the fuel cycle in the nuclear world on workforce is really raising our kids up here, training them, educating them, and having jobs for them here.
Very well said. And Ron, I know you got a hard stop at 10, so you want to jump in on this one, and then
Look, yeah, the vision, based on, Bob and Jamie were talking about is, at some point, this is the, what we have in the Tri-Cities, the world doesn't know about. And based on what we're doing, the world's going to find out about it. And based on the world knowing, there's going to be a lot of people, good people, that are going to want to come to the Tri-Cities, so we're looking for that workforce. We want to keep the great people we have. And we want this, what we know about us and what an amazing place we are for clean energy and net zero community is going to start bringing a lot of people who want to come here, and we will no longer be a secret. We'll be out on the AP wire, and it's world-class wine country. So,
that's right.
You got to throw that in. All right. Yeah. Thank
Perfect.
you. I do have to run. Thank you, Carl.
Thanks,
you.
Ron. Yeah,
Ron.
thanks for joining us.
Keep practicing that guitar. 30 minutes a day.
Paula, anything else to add on 2033? What do we, anything else that we haven't touched on yet? And I know we talked about workforce pipeline, which I know is one of your passions, but anything else?
Yeah, it is. But Jamie covered that well. And I guess I would just say that I don't know anyone that I've spoken with, whether individual or a company, that doesn't want to do something to be more clean or to address the clean energy challenge that we have before us. And so, having said that, what I think the future looks like is that it gets a whole lot easier to do that. And I think if we're solutions focused, it becomes the expectation and not something that we're talking about or pushing, but rather something that exists and a real resource for solutions that can be duplicated. I mean, I know that's a common theme, but it's got to be real. It's got to be so much easier for a company that's interested in and doesn't have this machine that they can, put on this, to find solutions, to find collaborators, to find people that can help. And we've already talked a little bit about the policy issue. So I think it just gets a whole lot easier and everybody rowing in the same direction, less about credit, more about solutions. That's what it looks like to me.
So well said. Thank you. Mike, you want to close us out on what do we look like in 2030? Add to the vision?
Well, I just think innovation is going to be the answer to all of this. And people are already doing it. I mean, if you read if you just go by what you read in the news, you'd be so depressed. But I tend to go other places, and it is amazing what's going on out there. And I'm just going to give you one tiny example, and this comes from Ron's territory in Arizona. But the ability to take solar panels and put them up a little bit higher and grow crops underneath is absolutely amazing to me. But you're generating electricity clean, you're shading the plants so they need less water, and you can keep growing your crops. These things are not in conflict. It just takes ingenuity and innovation, and we have it, and it's going on all around us, and our community is loaded with it. It's a matter of doing it. I mean, I'm 100% convinced solutions to our problems when it comes to clean energy or carbon management are there, and they're being implemented. And so I say, let's get on with it. And by 2040, oh my God, I think we're going to be way down the road, and how to live and work and play in a carbon neutral society.
Thanks, Mike. That was, as everybody else just did, that's really well said. I appreciate the vision comment. So as always, we could go on for probably another hour, but we're past our time. So I just want to thank everybody for your time this morning, and thank you all for your dedication and work to putting EFA together, launching it, I think successfully. Our next step will be hiring the executive director that we're looking forward to. And right here on Coffee with Karl and from TriDeck, we'll keep our community informed in our next steps and our accomplishments and our goals as we move forward. So thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great
Karl,
weekend.
let me jump on quick.
Yeah.
We got
You
30
bet.
plus participants here. If you were at all inspired or energized by our conversation today, fill out that application to be our executive director. And that's our ask of you today. Thank you very much. Back
Nice
to you,
going,
Karl.
Thanks,
Bob.
Bob. Yeah, no, thanks for including that. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thanks for getting us
Have
together,
a great
Karl.
weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Paula.
Tracy,
Thanks, Mike.
too.
All right.
Thanks,
Yep, Tracy did a great job as always.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Tracy,
Jamie.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great as
Thanks, Carl.
always. All right.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.